Okay, we've just ticked past 7, so we might get started. Tonight's session is being recorded though, so if you do need to leave or would like to watch over again, the recording will be available after tonight's webinar. So I'm just going to share my screen so we can get started. So tonight's webinar is to talk about the MMR and ACOP credential that the PSA are delivering, and also to talk about the program rules surrounding the ACOP program. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands in which we all meet. I'm very lucky to be here on Quandamooka country, and in the spirit of reconciliation, the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. I'd like to acknowledge, as I said, the Quandamooka people, the traditional owners of the lands that I'm meeting on today. And I always love hearing where everybody else is meeting from. We recognise that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and cultures are inseparable from Australia's collective history and culture, and is something to be proud of and celebrate. This is reflected in the recognition of the diversity of cultures and their richness, strengths, and resilience of the world's oldest living cultures. We recognise that this includes the continuation of cultural practices, including the use of bush medicines, languages, and connection to country. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were our first pharmacists. We are proud that we live in a country with the world's oldest continuous living cultures, and we're playing our part to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to keep these cultures alive and vibrant. Next is the PSA purpose statement. So we want every Australian to have access to the best healthcare and to enhance the lives of Australians through safe, quality, and effective use of medicines. We're committed to embedding, equipping, and enabling pharmacists to be at the forefront of healthcare. We will continue to reflect on our contribution and our engagement with each other. We are stronger when we work together. Little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions tonight, please use the Q&A feature. It helps us answer your questions efficiently. And if you have any problems, you can contact Ella, will be our moderator for the evening. A few introductions. So I'm Kerry Barwick, General Manager of Education and Training at the PSA, and I'm very lucky to have led the team who developed our credentialing program. And we have Ella and Sarah here with us. Ella's an accredited pharmacist and the Tasmanian State Manager. And Sarah's, I think everyone knows Sarah's accredited pharmacist and manager for accreditation. We also have Debbie Rigby here, who is an accredited pharmacist and PSA consultant pharmacist advisor. And I'd invite you, Debbie, to tell us a bit about what that role means.
Thanks, Kerry. I'm pretty excited about the role, actually. I just started this week and I've been away overseas for the last 2 months, so it's hit the ground running, really. So I think it really just reflects PSA's commitment to supporting a credentialed pharmacist. And it's really, as the name says, it's an advisor to PSA. It's only half a day a week, but it'll be across, doing webinars like this and really just advising directly to the CEO the issues that consultant pharmacists are facing. I'm chair of the Consultant Pharmacists Conference that'll be in Adelaide this year, and also will be involved in the negotiations for the strategic agreement around which, as you hopefully know, is now separated from the 8th Community Pharmacy Agreement. So hopefully I'll be doing, lots of advocacy, listening to you guys, and working with the PSA staff. So, yeah, I think it's an exciting role. It's a bit of the end of the journey for me, because I've been involved with HMRs and RMRs literally from day one. So I just see it as the next step, and the opportunities that we have now with ACOP, with potential review of the existing programs, and then future ones, that I can have some input into it. So I'm very much looking forward to it, and very open. I think everybody has my email, but so very open to hearing the issues that you have. Thanks.
Thanks, Debbie. So this session is accredited, and the learning objectives are that you'll, after attending this webinar, hopefully you'll be able to explain PSAs or understand PSA's MMR and ACOP credential program, recognise the impact changes to the program may have on credentialed pharmacists, and describe the program rules for the Department of Health and Aged Care's Aged Care On-Site Pharmacist Program. So where did this all begin? Sadly, I think a lot of people were unhappy that the AACP did cease in December of 2022. And so at that time, other providers or another provider needed to take over that education. The APC developed accreditation standards for educators to meet to be able to deliver a credential, and the PSA designed and delivered a course to meet those accreditation standards and have become accredited to deliver the MMR and ACOP credential. While that was happening, we continued to offer the program that the AACP delivered. So learners had no interruption to the program, and we've had many learners complete the accreditation stage 2 training with the PSA. What we know is that currently accredited pharmacists have an extension until the 30th of June 2025, where their existing MRNs are still able to be used to claim for HMRs and RMMRs. Also until 30th of June 2025, pharmacists have got until then to gain the ACOP credential to undertake the on-site pharmacist role. So there's plenty of time to undertake the RPL process to become credentialed if you are already accredited. So when the APC developed their accreditation standards for educators, they also developed performance outcomes for learners that learners must reach at the completion of a program. And this document's publicly available. So if you would like to look at it, it's on the APC website. But when you look at the performance outcomes, the 2 columns for MMR and for ACOP are very similar. There are almost no differences between the 2 sets of performance outcomes. So the example I've given here is that one of the performance outcomes where there is a slight difference in 3.1b, that there's a bit more liaison between all of the different healthcare settings on transitions of care, because that's something that the ACOP pharmacist would be involved with, but not necessarily a pharmacist conducting a HMR. So because of those reasons, what we decided to do with our program is that the MMR credential must be part of the ACOP credential. So we've split the program into so you can choose to do MMR only if you're not already an accredited pharmacist, or you can choose to do the combined credential, or if you are already an accredited pharmacist who can conduct HMRs and RMMRs, you can choose to do the ACOP credential only. So we've tried to build a little bit of flexibility into the program and use all of those performance outcomes that sit with MMR to sort of tick off a lot of the performance outcomes for ACOP, so you're not doing the same work twice. So each of the different credentials have got 4 modules, And there's pricing that on the screen there that tells you that if you are a Professional Plus member, you get a discount to undertake the credential. I know a lot of people will be interested in what type of assessment is within the program. So each of the 4 modules, both for MMR and ACOP, have got multiple choice questions to test knowledge, but then there needs to be some assessment that will indicate that people are performing to the level of the performance outcomes. So for the MMR credential, there's for module 1, there's multiple choice questions, but at the end of the module, you'll also have to do an inclusive practice reflection. So that's about culturally safe care and inclusive care. At the end of module 2, you'll need to do some peer discussion task. At the end of module 3, there's a simulation. And so we're building an avatar to help undertake that utilizing AI technology. So you'll be able to do that in the comfort of your own home and do that simulation with a patient to get the best possible medication history, and then submit documentation for medicines reconciliation from that. The other assessment at the end of module 3 is a live OSCE. Not in-person live, so you won't need to travel if you're in a rural or remote area. It'll be conducted online. The final assessment in module 4 is looking at a quality improvement tool around policy review and reflection, so you can continuously improve your practice. So hopefully you can see through looking at that assessment that we've really aimed to make this program as easily accessible as we can and as flexible as we can. We recognise that pharmacists who decide to undertake the MMR credential are likely to be working. A lot of you probably have families, and it's really hard to fit that extra study in on top of everything else. So as much as we can, we've tried to make it so that you won't need to travel to a capital city. You can have a lot of flexibility around when you do the learning, so you won't need to be waiting for workshops or things like that. So it was really a goal of developing this program that we made it as accessible as we could and flexible for learners to do in their own time. With the ACOP side of things, module 1, the performance outcomes are pretty much identical. So there's no end of module written assessment for that. It's just a couple of multiple choice questions for some performance outcomes that slightly differ to MMR. In module 2, collaboration in practice, you will need to undertake a site visit. So it was important to us that pharmacists who gain the ACOP credential have actually visited an aged care facility. But this isn't a placement situation. So for this site visit, there's a checklist, and so you'll need to organise to visit a site. You might be comfortable with 1 day, a couple of days. It's really up to you to be guided by ensuring that you've observed and seen everything you need to feel comfortable in that facility. You'll need to have a point of contact that can sort of sign off that you've been there and visited and seen what is on the checklist. And then when you come away from that, a reflection to really think about the differences in the workplace and what you observed and how you might need to adjust your practice based on that visit. In saying that, if you feel more comfortable to organise yourself more time at a facility, by all means, we do recommend that you really understand how a facility works before you take on that role, but it's not a compulsory part of the program. The visit is, but a placement type situation is not. We're at the moment in negotiations with some of the aged care pharmacist providers to be able to provide a point of contact to help you find a visit site, because we understand not everyone's going to have a contact that they can visit. Module 3, we have a case conference simulation. So as an ACOP pharmacist, you are likely to be part of case conferencing. So we've recorded a case conference and you can watch that and then submit an assessment. reflecting on how you would have contributed to that case conference. So again, of course, best practice is to be there and actually involved in it, but that's quite difficult around privacy and things like that. So a simulated environment is what we've done to achieve meeting that performance outcome. And again, you can do that at your own time. Module 4 has quite a bit of assessment because with an ACOP, the ACOP role, there is more around clinical audits, clinical governance, reporting. So there is a bit more assessment in that module than there is for MMR. But again, none of that is, you can do all of that in your own time. The next slide, I've just wanted to show you a couple of examples of what the assessments look like. I won't go through all of them, but I just wanted to show you some examples. So the case conference, hopefully you can read that. As I said, you'll have the patient details and then watch the recording of the case conference, and then you will need to submit a written assessment talking about what questions you would have asked if you were there, what points you would have raised, why, and reflecting on how you would have contributed to that meeting. Around our BPMH simulation, it's really quite, I really think this is it's quite innovative that we've got the avatar and she looks and speaks and acts as an elderly person. So it's quite, I think it's quite realistic. And you need to interview the patient and get the medication history from her. So the avatar knows what medications, the patient knows what medicines she's on, what she is or isn't taking, and you need to make sure that you're gathering and doing a good history taking from that. And then you need to submit the documentation once you've been through that interview. That's an example of what the site visit looks like. So there's a couple of pages of the checklist of the different things that you need to observe in the facility, and then come back and do some reflections around what you observed and what you learnt during your visit. So that's in a nutshell the full credential program. I really didn't want to go into too much detail because I would like to leave time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, but I will just quickly mention the RPL process. For those of you watching who are already accredited pharmacists or have the type of experience that where you think you would meet the performance outcomes. And as I said, they're public documents. You're very welcome to read through that. You have the opportunity to undergo the RPL process, both for MMR and for ACOP. The PSA is currently the only provider who is accredited by the APC to deliver the full credential for both MMR and ACOP, and the RPL for MMR and ACOP. So for the MMR, if you're already an accredited pharmacist, it's quite a simple process because we were able to map the assessment for the AACP delivered to the new assessment and the performance outcomes. However, for the ACOP credential, it's a little bit more complicated because there's not necessarily a standard course that we know people have completed to be able to map those performance outcomes against. So you may need to submit a little bit more evidence to show that you've met those performance outcomes. I don't want to spend too much time on this tonight because we did a couple of weeks ago have a whole webinar on the RPL process. So if you scan that QR code, it will take you to the recording of that webinar, and hopefully it will answer any questions you have about the RPL process. I might hand over to Debbie now, and she's going to talk a bit about the ACOP role and the program rules. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Kerry. So as I said at the start, I think it's a really exciting time. There's a lot of opportunities, and it's really just, to me, it's just the progression or the growth of our roles. And as I'm sure you're all aware, it really evolved. Lots of work was being done beforehand. Other reports had been written, but it was really the Royal Commission into Aged Care that identified these, significant medication management issues, medication safety issues, and I guess the funding for the ACOP role evolved out of that. It has taken a little while coming, partly because of the working out the rules and embedding the rules and program rules, but there's a lot of information available on the website. And as I said, I've been overseas for the last 2.5 months and came back a couple of days ago, and I've sat down and read all of these documents. So I'd really, today, it only took me about 2 hours. So I'd really encourage you to go to the website, go to the department's website, PPA website, download, review, read through the documents, the program rules, as well as the FAQs that they have. They're quite extensive and they pretty much answer most of the questions, I think. So, you know, find 2 hours in your life if you're currently doing it or seem to, you know, want to do it in the future. So I think there's a couple of really important points around it when you read through the program rules as well as the FAQs, that it is I guess the decision on whether you can, the aged care facility can still continue with RMRs and QUM services. And, you know, that's a negotiation, a discussion. If you currently have contracts with the aged care facilities that you really should have had by now and certainly should be having very soon if you haven't done that. But the advantages of ACOP, of being embedded in the aged care facility, which facilitates and encourages a much more collaborative role with the nursing staff, with the residents, and with the GPs and other visiting health professionals. So that collaborative role is, I guess, probably best practice. I know many of you that have been doing RMRs and QUM services, you sort of do that anyway, but and I know change can be a little bit challenging for all of us at times. So next slide, Kerry. Thanks. The Pharmacy Council of Australia has done this indicative job description. Again, it's available on the APC website. It's pretty comprehensive, and if you've been doing QUM services, again, you've probably been doing these anyway. I think the difference is that the allocation, the time expectation has increased compared to what the QUM services you might have been doing in the past. So that it is just an indicative job description. It gives you an idea, it gives the aged care facility an idea of the types of roles that you will be and could be doing. It's not one size fits all. You know, it really should be tailored to the needs of the facility and in negotiation with that facility. You know, for example, if they have dementia-specific units, a lot of your QUM services, your clinical audits, your education to nursing staff might be focused around care of people with dementia. Whereas, you know, if they don't have that one, a large percentage of people have dementia, but you know, you just need to tailor it to, and PSA already has a lot of resources and support in that area, and I'll certainly be looking to see what PSA can enhance to support you delivering those sort of QUM services. But it's also all the whole of facility quality improvement type services rather than calling it QM. But it's important to realise it still is patient or resident specific. You'd still be doing comprehensive medication reviews, follow-ups on patients, residents, sorry. It just wouldn't, as I'm sure you're all aware, you can't double dip. You can't, the facility can only have a contract for ACOP or the existing RMR and QUM services. So yeah, I'd really encourage you to have a look at that job description. So the program rules for Tier 1 and Tier 2 have been released, and they are available on the PPA website. As I said, I'd really encourage you to download them, read them comprehensively, and then look through the FAQs that are there, because I know just looking at some of the questions today, many of them are answered there, and similarly on the COPA Facebook website, many of the questions, they're answered just by reading those program rules. So Tier 1 is, from 1st of July, is available for application. I won't go through all the details of the application, etc., but I saw one question around, if you've got 101 beds, and it's approved beds, it doesn't change from day to day or week to week whether there's a resident in that bed or not. It's the approved places, which can change, and then there is a process outlined in the FAQs what happens if the approved number of places changes. So yes, if you're 101, you jump up to 0.6 FTE. There has to be a cutoff, and I think that's reasonable. So, and pharmacies will receive, it is through only community pharmacies with Tier 1 and Section 90 pharmacies, not any other Section 94 or whatever. They will receive funding via monthly claims in arrears, and that's available already. So, and then Tier 2 has been released, and so the aged care facility needs to approach and have evidence that they have approached at least one community pharmacy. It doesn't have to be the supply pharmacy. It doesn't have to be, there's no location rules. It doesn't have to be the closest one or anything like that. They just need to approach one community pharmacy, and it is up to the community pharmacy and the aged care facility whether they agree to provide the ACOP services. So if they don't agree, and either party doesn't agree, the aged care facility then has the capacity to approach credentialed pharmacists. It might be, you're already providing services to them, and you can enter into an agreement with them. The funding is a little bit more complicated. You can start, as soon as it's approved. You do need to give notice to the RMR and QUM providers, and once that has been finalised, then the ACOP can commence. There's this interim period between 1st of July and 1st of October where the PPA portal apparently is not operational for this Tier 2, but you still will be paid. That back claim will be there. So that's essentially the rules without going through them in a lot of detail. I think there's some really important points when you read through those rules that I sort of picked up on. One is if the aged care facility, both for Tier 1 and Tier 2, is part of a corporate entity, they do need to also sign off on the application for funding, as well as the individual aged care facility. So I guess my message or my thought to many of you who have been doing RMR and QUM services is that you need to be proactive. If you want to retain either doing RMRs or getting the approval and funding for ACOP services. By reading those program rules and understanding them and having discussions with the aged care facilities, with the GPs, because I could imagine the GPs might have some input into the decision making, because it is a collaborative program. So I won't go through any more details, but there is a lot of information there, and happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thanks, Debbie. that brings us to the end of our slides. That allows us plenty of time now for Q&A. I did have to give a plug for PSA 24 coming up from the 2nd to the 4th of August. You can still book tickets if you have not already. And lots of other things coming up for the PSA. We still have the WA and Queensland therapeutic updates coming up this year. And hopefully you all know that CPC 25 is going to Adelaide next year. If you wouldn't mind filling out the survey about tonight's webinar, it gives us information on how we can improve and what you'd like to see next. And I do want to talk about the communities of specialty interest, but I will let Ella do that because she is much more knowledgeable about the interdisciplinary care. Ella, you know the full name of it. I can't remember the full name.
The interdiscipline-based care
Yes,
such
that's
Debbie
right.
was our chair of, which we have a Facebook page for. It's intended to bring together all pharmacists who have an interest in working in the interdisciplinary team-based care space. That name may or may not need a bit of shortening and condensing. But yeah, we're currently on the lookout for people who are interested in being involved in the leadership group. I think we're putting out an expression of interest for a new chair for that group. And even if you're not interested in leading the group, we'd love for you to join the Facebook group and we can actively support you in that group with any questions you have about the new credentialing courses there.
Putting you on the spot, Ella, is it difficult for you to put a link in the chat
I can do that.
or something? This QR code will take you through to a page that has the links to all of the different courses if you would like to enroll. So I'll give you a minute to scan that and then I'll be able to stop screen sharing and we can run through any questions that Ella's got all of the questions there for us.
Thank you. So that link to the Facebook group is now in the chat. Sarah and I have been frantically answering as many questions as we could while you've been talking, but there are a few that we either haven't answered or we haven't managed to get to yet. The first question I don't know the answer to is how many reflections in each module?
I also don't know that off the top of my head. Not too many. The first
I did
one
have
has,
a quick
not very
look
many.
and it didn't look like a lot.
No, it won't be death by reflection.
There was a question around whether or not there's a pricing structure or like installments or ways to make it more affordable.
We did talk about that. It's unfortunately our systems have really struggled with putting the pricing mechanisms as they are in the first place, and it is even more complex to build in a payment plan. If that's something that would really be helpful for you, we can discuss that on a case-by-case situation. So we'll definitely be considerate of people's financial situations.
Do we have a contract agreement template for ACOP pharmacists?
Not yet.
No.
But definitely something that will need to be added to our resources. The resources section is a work in progress.
How are GPs going to be remunerated if there's no longer item 903 available?
I might answer that. So at this stage, item 903 continues. There's no indication that's not going to. And I think it does still need further clarification with the department, because I've been looking at the NBS description for item 903. And as we know, there's been a misalignment for many years now between what 903, which exactly the same as it was in 1997 when it first started, and then our pharmacy program rules have changed. So there's a misalignment between the 12 months and 24 months and so forth. So that is up for further discussion. And as I said, you know, the facility can choose to continue with the RMR and QUM contract while funding still continues. And there's no indication that that funding won't continue at this point in time. So they can still do it. Well, I think where the grey area is if, as part of your ACOP role, you're doing a comprehensive medication review with the GP, can the GP still claim item 903? And I think that's something that needs further clarification with the department on, because what was I going to say? Sorry, it's gone out of my head. What I was going to say there. I've got terrible jet lag. Yeah. I mean, that's all I can say. And it's certainly one of the things that have been flagged that we need to get further clarification on.
And do we have any word on RMMRs beyond July or June next year? Will that program continue alongside ACOP beyond then?
So at this stage, you know, because they're out of they're a separate bucket of money now to the community pharmacy agreement. There's an indication that it will continue at this stage.
Thanks. Got so many questions. So how would you negotiate a situation if the aged care facility does not agree with the community pharmacy? So the aged care facility wants their current RMR pharmacists, but the community pharmacy that the aged care facility is approached wants to employ someone different. Can the aged care facility have approached the community pharmacy, but then turn down their offer of a pharmacist and pursue their own pharmacist?
Yep, that's what the rules say, that the aged care facility has that choice.
Kerry, how long will the assessment of the 4 modules take on average?
Very hard to put an average on something like that. My suggestion would be for both, if you're doing both programs, 6 to 12 months. And saying that, that is assuming you're working and having other commitments, not solely committed to undertaking the program. If you've got a lot of time to invest in it, you could do it in 3 to 6 months. But that's a guess.
And
once assessments, the written assessments are submitted, the assessor does have up to 4 weeks to assess. I don't think they will take that long. I don't think demand is going to be that high, but we do have up to 4 weeks to do the assessment. But it's a competency-based training, so there's no real time. It's not time bound. If you've got take a couple of weeks off, or don't have a lot of commitments, you could get through it quite quickly.
Thank you. And can site visits be done in a facility in which they're already doing RMMRs?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Excellent. Confirming for people that yes, if you are already accredited, if you want to do in the ACOP role, you will need to do the ACOP credential, but you can RPL the first section for the MMR. So accredited pharmacists can RPL to MMR and then to do the add-on for the ACOP credential. I'm going to give a brief mention to other courses that are currently accredited by APC. What are the other options out there at the moment? We're the only ones offering both courses. There is currently a MMR only course offered by Monash and an ACOP course only by another provider. But at the moment, if you want both credentials, PSA is the only offer at the moment. Not sure what that's about. Will the remuneration for RMMRs be increasing?
Again, that's part of the negotiations that PSA will be having with the department as part of the new strategic agreement.
If you're in the middle of stage 2 of the old course, please email credentialing@psa.org.au and they'll be able to help you with moving to the new course. Sorry. Can we have some more detail on the MMR program assessments? Are they in person or online? What's required to complete each assessment? Is there a time limit? Kerry, can you provide a little more detail on the MMR credential?
Yeah, so the time bound for all of our courses, we suggest learners complete within 2 years. So once you enroll, you'll have up to 2 years to complete the course. Reason being is we need to know that there's recency of knowledge. And if you've done a little bit 2 years ago and the rest in 5 years, we don't know that all of that knowledge is recent. But there's not, other than that, there's no time-bound components of it. It's really up to you how quickly or slowly you go through the course. We've kept it very flexible. So every module has got a section of multiple choice questions. So you'll work your way through the module and through all the learning components and then undertake the multiple choice questions to make sure that you've got the knowledge that you need. And then there'll be some sort of practical component to the assessment. So a peer discussion task where you'll be asked to compare an MMR report and find a peer to discuss that with. So that's not time bound. There's no due date for it. It's up to you when you complete that. The simulated activity through the AI, again, is not something you have to wait to make an appointment for or anything like that. You can do that whenever you're ready. Once you've worked through, we do suggest you work through the modules in order and build your knowledge. So once you've worked through that module, pass the multiple choice questions, then move on to that, that practical component of the assessment. The only thing that you will need to essentially sort of make an appointment for is the OSCE. But what we will have is a range of assessors who'll be available to do those OSCEs. And we have a booking system where you can see all of the availabilities and book in at a time that suits you. So if demand is quite high, it may be the case that you have to wait a week or two to be able to make that appointment. But that's the only thing that is time bound, I suppose, within the course. The rest you really do at your own pace. I hope that answers the question.
Our course does not require any MMR course reports written like were needed for AACP. Is that true or
You will
false?
need to submit a report after you've done the OSCE. So the OSCE will be the communication and the mechanism to gather information to submit a report. So there will still be a submission of a report, and I don't think you can have a course on MMR without being able to demonstrate that you can write a report. So yes, there will still be that submission after you've done the OSCE. So rather than just being given the information, we're really making it a holistic assessment where you need to demonstrate that you can gather that information and communicate effectively to be able to write that report.
Excellent. If so, we know that people can commence the ACOP role without having done the ACOP credential yet. Do they need to have moved from the old accreditation to the new credentialing? Is that a grey area?
I did ask this question, and no, essentially, because the Department of Health and Aged Care have said that you have up until the 30th of June 2025 to get the ACOP credential. Until that time, you need to be MMR accredited or credentialed, and they're giving you an extension to the 30th of June 2025 to upgrade your MMR accreditation / credential. So no, you don't need to do that,
Excellent.
but you do need to be accredited to do that role.
Yes.
It is
Can
very confusing.
you explain to people what Audrey is?
Audrey is the tool, the AI-driven tool that you will need to use to gather that information for the medication history. Yeah, that's a partnered organisation that we have who's developed all of that. We do not have that technical capability. It is a well first.
Amazing. Quick answers, yes, we do already have some pharmacists who have completed the credential. So that's good. Progress is underway. You can submit anytime and we'll start ticking you off. Is it possible to share the link for how to apply for RPL? Do they just need to email us if they're a Professional Plus member and have themselves enrolled in that course?
Sorry. Yes. If you're a Professional Plus member, email the credentialing at psa.org.au.
Debbie, would you like to comment on when we expect the strategic agreement to be finalised?
I couldn't say at this point in time. It will be later this year or next year.
It will be done within the next 12 months, but we
Yeah,
don't know when.
hopefully. I can see a question there around the GPs, and it is a concern. Yeah, you know, going on from what I said about item 903, and Raymond said, you know, how will the GPs be remunerated for the time? As absolutely they should. They spend discussing issues that we might identify and reports we will write under the ACOP measure. So case conferencing, GPs do get funded for, and we could participate in a case conference under the ACOP program. So I think, again, looking closely at the MBS item numbers for case conferences in aged care facilities, something you should do if you don't know already, and you know, approaching the GPs, talking about that, and I think that's a really good way of, you know, really, if you're not already, encouraging that authentic collaboration with the GP.
Absolutely. And there's also moves currently to incentivise GPs in aged care with their...
Yeah, that's correct. So they've got another funding mechanism for their role in aged care. It's not huge amounts of money, but it is something.
Yeah.
I can see there's a few questions about links and things like that. What I'll do is after the webinar, we're able to export the list of attendees, and I will send out an email to everybody with all of the relevant links, how to apply for RPL, links to the current, the full credentialed courses. And I'll also put links into the Department of Health and Aged Care where those program rules are, and to the Pharmacy Council where the job description and performance outcomes are. So because it's a bit hard to get it all up on one page, I will send that out to everybody as an email, so you've got it all.
And a link to the recording as well.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Ella, I can see a question about the expected hours per day in the ACOP role.
Yes, I saw that.
They are in 3.8-hour blocks, so you can either do half day or full day. There is provision for in rural area, MM 5 to 7, for doing it on a fortnightly basis. But yeah, it is essentially in those sort of half day or full day blocks. And that's part of the weekly, what's the time sheet that you need to keep records of.
Yes. And further to that, in rural areas, do you have any suggestions or insight into how it may work, given that we currently have a situation where some pharmacists in rural areas are earning more than what this payment's going to be allowing for. So how may those residents be serviced?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it comes down to negotiation and your relationship with those aged care facilities, because the aged care facility can provide extra funding to you if they have, their short of money as well. But there is that provision. And I know for many years I did do RMRs for Western, a country aged care facilities, and they funded my airfares to come out every 3 months. So there are precedents. I know, as I said, funding for aged care facilities is challenged, but again, I just think we've got to be innovative, and if you're already doing it, they value you, want to continue to start having those discussions with them.
Thank you.
Ella, I just was going to see if Sarah is still there, because she is most frequently answering the emails in the credentialing inbox. Sarah,
I am back. I'm sorry about
that's
that.
fine. I just wanted to ask Sarah, is there anything that you're getting frequently asked through the credentialing inbox or phone calls about that you would like to raise tonight to
Thank you,
the
Kerry.
group?
It's an incredibly busy time, and there are lots of questions, and I can appreciate that. One thing, if we have current learners on the webinar tonight, I'd like to reassure them that we will be in touch to let them know exactly what they need to do to progress moving forward. So that's very much a frequently asked question. There are certainly other credentialed pharmacists who have concerns about the RPL process. I know we have some current accredited pharmacists on the webinar tonight as well. And just looking at some of the questions, people want to know about the course outline. People want to know there's some of these things. I don't think I'm qualified to answer the question about remuneration, but yeah, no, there. So RPL. The other thing too, people are asking about the programs moving forward, and I think that's something that the new strategic plan will be looking at. But I think generally people are very positive, and I think it's great that we have so many interested people online tonight. And I hope that we've been able to answer and will continue to answer most of the questions.
Thanks, Sarah.
I have seen a question about whether more than one credentialed pharmacist can provide ACOP services. And again, the FAQs have information on that. So if the aged care home is entitled to 0.2 FTE, then they can only have one ACOP pharmacist. If it's 0.4 FTE, they can have a maximum of 2 different ACOP pharmacists, credentialed pharmacists. And if they're 0.6 FTE, they can have a maximum of 3 different ACOP pharmacists. So there is, flexibility within, because some of the larger homes, which, are over, if they're over, what is it? Number of beds, very large facilities, it equates to more than 1 FTE, over 300, no, over 250.
250, yep.
It equates to more than 1 FTE, so you can have a maximum of 3 different credentialed pharmacists.
Lots of accredited pharmacists. People want to know how many we might need to service all the aged
Yeah.
care facilities. A lot. It's a bit difficult to quantify because it's the way it's blocked per bed, so you can't just look at how many beds there are across the country. But we're talking about I don't know, there are about 3,000 facilities across the country.
Just under 3,000 facilities and
Yeah.
over 200,000 approved beds. So it will depend clearly, but so I think that's part of the excitement that we've got this opportunity, you know, for people that are lots of people thinking of getting credentialed, sorry. So there will be lots of opportunities moving forward.
So many questions. I love that you're so engaged. It's making my eyes go a bit croaky. ACOP locums, locum mates, looking at that. That would fit within the program rules based on what I have read. I think, Debbie, do you think?
I think it's one of the things that I've marked to clarify. Yeah.
CPD requirements. Does anyone want to talk to that? Is it still 60 per year? That was a AACP requirement, wasn't it, Sarah?
I'll take that one. No, it is not. It was an AACP requirement. And so, no, that CPD requirement is no more. So just the standard CPD requirement of 40 as per the APRA rules.
Thank you. A question from a community pharmacy owner. Can we see any commercial incentives to community pharmacy participating in the ACOP program?
Well, the funding goes directly to the community pharmacy to employ or contract a credentialed pharmacist. The rules are very specific about saying it cannot be used for other services such as funding DAAs, etc. I think, like anything, you've got to work out the business proposition for your pharmacy.
I think while it may not end up being a direct financial gain, I think there'll be a lot of improvements through workflow and being able to have your person who's easily contactable within the facility, that, you know, you can fix all of those crinkles that often impede your workflow in community pharmacy when you're trying to deal with things with the aged care facility.
It does need to be, you know, ideally a dedicated time each week. You can't sort of run back to if it is the contract with the community pharmacy, tier 1, you can't just sort of jump back to the pharmacy for a couple of hours if it's busy. It needs to be a allocated, dedicated, you know, whatever the FTE equivalent is. So there will be challenges, you know, if a pharmacist is employed by a community pharmacy, just from a workload point of view. But, you know, the benefit is gained by being embedded in the aged care facility. Ideally, I know many GPs will just visit residents ad hoc, but others will, especially with their new incentives, are more likely to have specific times per week that they might visit. And clearly then, if you can, try to coordinate the time that the GPs visit with the time that you're allocated to be there.
Ella, there's another, just on that theme, another aged care query here, which is interesting. Given the ACOP is required to work in 3.8-hour blocks, if a teleconference is required with the prescriber and there's a conflict in availability, can you do the case conference remotely whilst not on site and have it contribute towards required hours?
The answer is yes for Max.
Yeah.
I feel like be able to use for case conferences if it's, convenient to the prescriber, but it's not stipulated in the program rules.
That's a good question. I'll seek to get it
Take that one on
clarified.
notice.
Yes.
Okay.
Because as Ella said, you can, it is it's specific saying you need to be on site, but there is that proviso already about participation in a MAC if it is can be done virtually or conducted virtually outside of your allocated time. So, it needs further clarification, but in my mind, I think you could make a rational argument for extending that to case conferences, but we'll have to get that confirmed.
Thanks, Debbie.
Kerry, can you just confirm the HMR, the MMR and the ACOP credentials are just a single once-off point in time?
Yes. Yep. So there'll be, there's no re-accreditation. Once you're credentialed, you're credentialed.
And will we continue to offer RPL for ACOP after the 30th of June next year?
Yep. Yeah, it'll, I won't say forever, but there's no reason to stop offering that. Someone might have experience and decide to apply for an RPL after that date.
Yeah. And yes, people who currently have accreditation have until the 30th of June next year to RPL to the MMR credential.
Yeah. We are at time. So I think we've answered hopefully all of the burning questions. Thank you everybody for all of your questions and attending this evening. As Sarah said, it is really great to see so many pharmacists engaged in this area. I will, as I said, send out a follow-up email to all of the attendees with links to all of the different websites and the Facebook group for the CSI and all of that information. As always, though, if you have any questions, email credentialing@psa.org.au, which is pretty much just Sarah, so please be patient. She does an amazing job answering all of the emails and phone calls. So, but we are here to help. So we will do our best to answer any of your questions. In the email, I'll also include the link to the webinar about the RPL process because it does go into quite a bit of detail. So if you do have questions about that process, hopefully that webinar will answer any of those questions. So thank you again. Does anyone have any other closing remarks before we close out the webinar? No. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.